Sovereign debt is eating the world, lining up the next financial crash that could make 2008 look like a picnic. So how did we get here? In short, over decades, governments and central banks deluded themselves into thinking that unlimited deficit spending financed by unlimited money printing is a free ride. That they won't do what they've done for literally millennia, which is plunge the economy into stagflation. They are, of course, wrong. So the story begins in the 1970s when Nixon broke the gold standard, unleashing deficits around the world. But the latest chapter really starts in 2008, when central banks bailed out the financial system by printing trillions of dollars. At the time, everybody knew it would cause inflation, but it did not, because banks held onto the free trillions to plug their balance sheets. Central bankers concluded that the impossible was now possible. Meanwhile, a second useful myth was shattered by Japan, that national debt is deadly. Again, everybody knew that public debt above 100 or 125% of GDP would end the world. But Japan crossed that line 25 years ago, and pretty much nothing happened. Now, there are idiosyncratic reasons for Japan, and their economy has been slow, but the lesson was learned. If debt doesn't matter, deficits don't matter. Put those two together, and it was off to the races. Never mind that we have centuries of evidence that money printing causes inflation and that countries always default when debt gets big enough. In fact, there have been 14 sovereign defaults since Japan crossed that magic line 25 years ago. But they learned the lessons they wanted to learn. Meanwhile, they put all of this into reality with COVID. To bribe voters into lockdowns, countries around the world printed roughly 10 trillion in deficits, dutifully financed by central bankers. Alas, this time was not different. Inflation did take off, which scared the central banks into pulling back at this point. This is now leaving those massive deficits to the private sector, who are reaching their limit of what they can digest, leading them to start wondering if governments can actually handle that debt. The final piece of the crisis is the shrinking economy, because the main way central banks fight inflation is by choking off the private economy with interest rate hikes. Now, after 276 hikes worldwide, they have plunged essentially the entire world into stagflation. So the financial Ponzi is not only losing its key financier, central banks, it is now being built on a shrinking base. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained. What's next is it could take months, it could take years, but I think we are headed for a financial crisis. Because the drivers, federal spending and inflationary central banks, won't change unless we actually get a crisis. At which point it would take down thousands of banks, insurers, and pension funds, along with years of high inflation that would wipe out life savings and impoverish especially older people who thought they were safe. It all looks very dire, but remember, we've been through a lot worse, and when the hard times come, men do get strong. For example, post-Civil War America looked like it was done. Half the country was flattened, and we were all going through hyperinflation. Yet the crisis concentrated voters' minds. Just 15 years later, the country had reestablished the gold standard, followed by 30 years of the most epic golden age in U.S. history, indeed in human history. So just 15 years from the end of the world to the greatest golden age. So don't lose hope. A storm is coming. There will be a lot of innocence, but we are building a beautiful world on the other side. Check out the full article with some beautiful charts at profsaintange.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.